White Americans have traveled freely across Asia for decades, welcomed as tourists, investors, and professionals. But in 2026, that open door is quietly and rapidly closing in more countries than most people realize. Shifting politics, rising nationalism, and deep historical wounds are changing everything. In this video, we talk about the 7 Asian countries where white Americans are no longer welcome and explain the real reasons behind this. And now, let's dive in. Number 7. Vietnam. Vietnam has long carried deep wounds from its history with America. Decades after the war ended, many older Vietnamese still hold quiet resentment toward American visitors, especially white Americans seen as symbols of that painful era. But in 2026, something new is happening. A younger generation, driven by rising nationalism and social media, is pushing back against American cultural dominance. Local businesses in smaller cities and provinces are refusing service to foreign tourists. Online Vietnamese communities are calling out what they describe as disrespectful behavior from American visitors, including loud conduct at temples and aggressive bargaining in markets. The government has also strengthened ties with China and Russia, making Washington less popular in political circles. While major tourist cities like Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City still welcome visitors, the mood outside those areas is turning. White Americans are reporting uncomfortable experiences, being ignored, overcharged, or turned away without any explanation. Vietnam is not officially banning Americans, but the cultural and political climate is sending a very clear message. Oh, before we go to the next country, comment down below where you are watching. We love to know where you are from. And now, let's go to the next country. Number 6, Cambodia. Cambodia may surprise many people on this list, but in 2026, white Americans are finding it increasingly difficult to feel welcome here. The main driver is growing resentment over what locals call poverty tourism. For years, some American travelers have treated Cambodia like a cheap playground, taking advantage of low prices while showing little respect for local customs and dignity. Videos have gone viral on Cambodian social media showing American tourists behaving badly at Angkor Wat, bargaining offensively, or treating service workers with open contempt. This has triggered a powerful public backlash. Local advocacy groups are now pressuring the government to introduce tourist conduct laws specifically targeting disrespectful foreign visitors. Cambodia's government has also been drifting closer to China politically, and anti-American sentiment is growing in official media and public discourse. Several Cambodian provinces have witnessed protests against American cultural influence. Small guest houses and local restaurants in towns outside Siem Reap have started quietly refusing American travelers. While not every business has taken this position, the pattern is impossible to ignore. White American travelers are increasingly feeling unwanted in a country that once welcomed every visitor with open arms. In 2026, Cambodia is sending a message that patience has limits. Number 5, Malaysia. Malaysia's multicultural identity has always attracted foreign visitors. But in 2026, white Americans are no longer receiving a warm welcome. Rising Islamic conservatism is reshaping public attitudes toward Western visitors, particularly Americans. After high-profile incidents involving tourists who violated mosque dress codes or posted culturally disrespectful content online, frustration reached a boiling point. Religious leaders and influencers have publicly demanded restrictions on Western tourists who arrive with arrogance and leave with social media content that mocks local traditions. The government has also been distancing itself from Washington, strengthening ties with China, and criticizing U.S. policy in the South China Sea. Anti-American rhetoric has entered mainstream everyday conversation. Some hotels and tour operators in conservative states like Kelantan have quietly stopped accepting American bookings. Even cosmopolitan Kuala Lumpur now feels noticeably cold toward white American visitors. Malaysia is not officially banning Americans, but the environment makes one thing completely and unmistakably clear. White American visitors are no longer the welcome guests they once were. Wait. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more content, and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. And now, let's go to the next country. Number 4, Myanmar. Myanmar has been through some of the most difficult years in its modern history, and in 2026, white Americans are caught in a deeply uncomfortable position. After the 2021 military coup, the U.S. imposed heavy sanctions and publicly condemned the military junta. While many ordinary Myanmar citizens support democratic values, the military-controlled media has spent years portraying white Americans as enemies of the nation and dangerous agents of foreign interference. This messaging has taken deep root, especially in communities with strong military presence and limited access to outside information. American travelers who manage to enter the country despite active safety warnings often find themselves under close surveillance, questioned by local authorities, and treated with open suspicion by communities that have absorbed years of anti-American propaganda. Several NGO workers and journalists from the U.S. have been detained in recent years, poisoning the atmosphere for ordinary American tourists. Businesses that openly serve American visitors risk being labeled politically disloyal by the junta, and some have already been pressured to stop with serious consequences for refusal. Religious tensions also add another layer. In majority Buddhist regions, white Western visitors are sometimes viewed through the lens of missionary suspicion, especially after American-funded religious organizations were accused of undermining national culture and values. The combination of political hostility, relentless propaganda, and tight military control has created a country where white Americans are genuinely unwelcome and in some cases in real danger. White Americans traveling to Myanmar in 2026 do so entirely at their own significant risk. Number 3, Indonesia. Indonesia is the largest Muslim-majority country in the world, and in 2026, white Americans are experiencing a level of hostility here that many find deeply surprising. For years, Bali was seen as an open paradise for American travelers, but the island and the broader country are changing fast. Incidents involving American tourists behaving irresponsibly in sacred spaces, ignoring local laws, and posting disrespectful content online have caused enormous public outrage. The phrase "ugly American" has become a common and widely shared viral hashtag in Indonesian social media, almost always paired with videos of white Western tourists acting badly at temples and beaches. The Indonesian government has already introduced strict new tourist regulations in Bali, specifically targeting problematic foreign visitors. Deportations of American tourists have climbed sharply in 2026. These are not isolated incidents. Outside of Bali, in cities like Surabaya, Makassar, and Banda Aceh, white American travelers report being refused service, followed by suspicious locals, or confronted in public spaces. Some have been asked to leave neighborhoods entirely. Rising religious conservatism has made American cultural values around dress, behavior, and gender increasingly unwelcome across the country. Political tensions between Washington and Jakarta over trade and military policy have added further fuel to this fire. Community leaders and politicians are openly calling for stricter limits on American visitors. White Americans who enter Indonesia in 2026 do so, knowing the warm welcome they once received has disappeared entirely, and that the rules of engagement have fundamentally and permanently changed. Number 2, Pakistan. Pakistan has long had a deeply complicated relationship with the United States. And in 2026, white Americans are experiencing that complexity in the most direct and personal way possible. Decades of U.S. military operations in the region, including drone strikes that killed Pakistani civilians, have left a generational wound that has never fully healed. That resentment has only intensified under the current political climate. Pakistan's most powerful street movements are now openly anti-American, and white Western travelers are frequent targets of verbal confrontation and public hostility in major cities. American tourists in Lahore, Karachi, and Islamabad have reported being followed, harassed, and refused accommodation by guest houses that no longer want the attention that comes with American guests. Some have been asked to leave entire neighborhoods after being identified as American. The situation has grown serious enough that the U.S. State Department has issued elevated travel warnings for Americans visiting Pakistan, citing not just terrorism risks, but also the growing climate of public hostility toward Western visitors. Social media in Pakistan is flooded daily with content calling out American foreign policy and framing white Americans as representatives of military aggression and cultural imperialism. Even Pakistanis who personally welcome Americans feel enormous social pressure not to be seen doing so publicly. Business owners who have historically catered to American tourists have faced community backlash, with some losing customers among their local base. Mosques and community leaders have openly called for Pakistani citizens to refuse service and cooperation with Americans, especially those perceived as government-connected. For white American travelers, Pakistan is now one of the most unwelcoming countries in all of Asia. The reasons are deep, historical, and deeply personal for millions of Pakistani citizens who have lived through what they describe as American violence delivered from the sky. The loss of life from American military actions has never been forgotten here. It is deeply lived memory, and that memory poisons every encounter between ordinary Pakistanis and white American visitors. In 2026, the message being sent to white Americans arriving in Pakistan is loud, painfully unmistakable, and carved in stone. Number 1. China. China sits at the top of this list for reasons that go far beyond cultural friction or isolated incidents. In 2026, white Americans face a level of institutional, political, and social hostility in China that is unlike anything seen elsewhere in Asia. The trade war, technology sanctions, diplomatic confrontations, and decades of U.S. criticism of the Chinese government have created a national mood in which white Americans are viewed not merely as unwanted tourists, but as living symbols of a rival power determined to contain Chinese greatness. State media in China regularly portrays white Americans as arrogant, hypocritical, and dangerous. These messages reach hundreds of millions of Chinese citizens every single day through television, social media, and government channels. On the ground, white American travelers report being refused visas, denied hotel bookings, and turned away from restaurants that display signs in Mandarin indicating Americans are not welcome. American passport holders now face extraordinary scrutiny at border crossings with lengthy interrogations and frequent denials of entry that have no clear explanation. Businesses that previously catered to American clients have quietly stopped doing so to avoid being labeled pro-American by local authorities, a designation that can carry serious consequences. Young Chinese citizens raised on nationalist media that frames white Americans as agents of Western imperialism openly confront travelers on social media and sometimes in public spaces. Academic institutions that once eagerly partnered with American universities are now distancing themselves to demonstrate political loyalty. For white Americans specifically, the hostility runs deep. Beyond politics, there is a cultural and emotional rejection of everything white Americans are perceived to symbolize. Western dominance, racial entitlement, and economic exploitation are the accusations thrown most frequently. China is not simply a country where white Americans feel unwelcome. It is a country where the government, the media, and a rapidly growing number of ordinary citizens are actively and deliberately working to make white Americans understand they do not belong here. In 2026, with tensions between Washington and Beijing at historic levels, that message has never been louder, clearer, or more difficult for any single American to simply ignore. Thanks for watching. Before you go, make sure to like, subscribe, and smash the notification bell. Do you think this growing trend will spread to even more countries across the world? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading and replying to as many as possible, and goodbye.